So today I wanted to respond to something that I've seen. I've seen this on the Discord, I've seen this on the Patreon, I've seen this on the YouTube comments in yesterday's video, and that is people questioning around my transparency and what I share. And a lot of this comes off the UK portfolio review that I did yesterday. I've had a few people questioning that transparency, and first of all, what I'm going to say is that I think that in general the kind of internet has got to a place where people do say things on the internet which they probably wouldn't say to someone that if they saw in person. I also think it's got to a place where, especially in the YouTube scene, in the stock market scene, I think the bear market in particular has probably increased this, is that people find it acceptable to say things on YouTube and to stock market content creators because of the situation that we're being through that isn't acceptable and isn't appropriate. And I think those two things are especially exploded in the last kind of couple of months and years, which obviously I think has added into this situation. But what I want to do is respond to this because I've seen a few people question the transparency around what I share on the internet. Now, in my opinion, I feel like I share a good amount and I share a lot more than most creators out there. When you look at what I'm sharing, I'm sharing what I'm buying and what I'm selling. There's plenty of YouTubers that aren't sharing what they're buying and what they're selling. You know, you'll see that they'll talk about stocks and you'll actively not know what they own. Or if they do own, maybe that eventually they'll come out and say, oh, I bought this and look, it's up so much. And then it's like, well, you never said you were buying that 6 months ago. Or selling. You know, there's plenty of YouTubers out there that will talk about a stock, buy a stock, and then all of a sudden they quietly sell it out in the background. Not on here. I've always posted what I'm buying, what I'm selling. I post my portfolio, which a lot of YouTubers don't do. You can see my portfolio through the documents that I share, and I've done that for 5 years. Probably even more. I would even go towards 6-7 years. So for the last 6-7 years, you could track my portfolio and the stocks I'm holding, the stocks that I'm selling, and you can see how they're all doing. That's a very good record. Same again, I don't see many people sharing that. I share what the active position sizes are. I share what the average is and how much I'm up and down on those positions, which once again, I don't think a lot of people share out there. So you can pretty much get a gist of how my portfolio is going, what I'm up, what I'm down, what I'm buying, what I'm selling, which I think is plenty of information and can give you a good kind of direction on where I am. And I think as an investor, that helps you show what I'm trying to build there. For me, I personally think that's enough information for you to see what I'm doing and how I'm doing as an investor. Now, clearly, there's a few people out there that don't think that's good enough. And I don't know if that comes from a place of a curiosity of like, oh, I'd just like to know this kind of detail. Or I don't know if it just comes from another point of view where people are just being a bit nosy and wanting to know your personal finance situation. You know, oh, how much is this guy like worth and what money has he got here? Like, does it come from that point of view? Now, personally for me, I think that's good enough. But people clearly are not happy with that, and I don't know if that's just because people just want to be negative or looking for some negative to pick up on, or they want to know personal finances, or it comes from a good place, like I said. Now for me, like I said, I think that's good enough information, and for me, I don't really want to be sharing my financial situation on the internet. I don't want someone that I don't know that lives over in Spain to know how much money I've got in certain accounts. Now, don't get me wrong, if you are an investor that's been watching me for 5-6 years, you probably know that I actually used to show the amounts that I actually have in my portfolio. I don't do that anymore. The reason why is because I've got a lot of friends and family that watch the videos nowadays, and I don't want them to know how much money I've got in certain accounts. I just think that can cause a bit of a rift, and certain situations potentially about, oh, you know, so-and-so's got this, you know, I just think I just don't want that to be shared. The other thing as well is that previously when I actually used to share my accounts and how much money I've got in certain accounts, I actually had someone trying to get into my accounts a few years back. And then I was about, you know, that made me panic a little bit because for me, I've done this investing game now for many years. I've worked hard to start a portfolio. I got very good returns in 2017, 18, 19, 20. 21, not too bad. Obviously, 22 was an awful year. But I've done really well in the stock market, and I've been putting a lot of money, and I've set up businesses, to put more, and creating more money to put into the stock market account. For me, I've got a lot of money in there that I really want to be protective of. I've worked really hard for it, and I don't want to risk it just because Joe from Devon wants to see how much money is in the account. it's just not worth it for me, to be honest with you. Now, if you have a, and I don't want to take people take this the wrong way, if you've only got 10,000 in the, or 10,000 might be a lot of money to some people, 10,000 in the account. I can see why people like sharing that on the internet. Like, 10,000 relatively is probably a low amount to be invested. Now, it's better than nothing, and some people would have worked really hard for that. But if you've got big scales of money, if you've got a lot of your net worth tied up into certain stocks and certain accounts, and I don't want people to get access to that, because for me to recover any of that would take me such a long time. So there's reasons why I don't share that, for personal reasons and also just protection for me. There's some nasty people out there on the internet, and I want to protect. I want to protect myself as well. So that's the personal reason why I actually don't share my personal numbers on the internet anymore, for them sort of reasons. Now, the next thing that a lot of people have said that I'm not transparent about is my performance. Now, for me, you can see my performance. You can see what I'm up on every single stock, what I'm down on every stock. It's all updated. And I remember 2 years ago, people saying, my portfolio was doing absolutely amazing, and people saying, you're lying about your portfolio, you can't be doing that well. And now it's got to this point of view, and some people still say like, is that your, why would I lie about being down 77% on Boohoo? If you're lying about your portfolio, you won't be doing that. You won't be lying about having skills down 97%. You won't be doing that. So it's funny how that also works and how that's perceived depending on your performance as well. And I've also had people question like, can you actually do your performance year to date? How is it performing? Now, for me, I did actually used to do this, and it was a lot easier when I used to keep a relatively smaller portfolio like 4 or 5 years ago. For me now, I've split my money across multiple accounts just for, once again, a little bit of protection from that point of view. And to now figure out how much this position and this position and this position, and combine it all together and how it all is, it takes a lot of time. And unfortunately for me, I work a full-time job, I have rental properties, I have another business to run, I obviously do the YouTube side of it, I do the Patreon side of it, I have to do the researches. I just don't have a time that, I'm a one-man show, there's no video editors, there's no people creating thumbnails. I don't always have the time to put all that together. So this is the quickest way for me to show my performance. But once again, some people question like, he is probably like doing really poorly year to date, or why aren't you showing that? Why don't you show your performance? And that's generally the reason. But just to prove a few people wrong, what I did is I actually worked out my year to date performance for you guys, and my year to date performance is 16.82%, which is pretty decent. I would like it to be a little bit higher, but considering the way that S4 Capital's been killed and HIMS has retreated so much this year, if it wasn't for that, I'd be in the 20+%, that I would be happy with that. But still, 16.82% is pretty decent. If I do that every year, I'll be very rich when I retire, when I'm towards 50, 60. I'll be very happy from that point of view. But for me, like, that's not important. At the end of the day, for me, as a stock market, as an investor and as a content creator, I need to buy a stock and then I need to sell it, and I need to make money on that position. That's the big thing. I buy and then I sell for money. There's a few people that may say like, I've got a year to date of 50% return. Absolutely amazing, best investor ever. But the problem is like, let's say you have 2 stocks in there that are 20% down, and you've got a 50% year-to-date portfolio. That's great, but then if during that year you don't sell any of those stocks, and then you actually sell them 2 stocks out at a loss, well, yeah, you might have a great return, but you've not got any profit to show for it. The only things you got to show for it is that the 2 stocks you've actually sold for big losses. So, it's not very good. It's very, all the people went through, 2021 saying, 2020 saying, this is my year-to-date return. But it's no good if you didn't take any profit of that, and then within the next year in 2022, all your stocks got absolutely crushed, and now you're down on all your positions. For me, the big thing is selling it out. When you sell it out and you take the money, that's what makes you a good investor. If you're selling more things that you're making money on than selling things that you're taking losses on, for me, that's the big thing. A lot, and this is big on the YouTube scene right now, a lot of people are covering their portfolio by going, I got absolutely killed in 2022. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to buy the big holdings in the S&P 500, and if the S&P 500 goes up, look, I'm doing really well with the S&P 500, but the holdings are Nvidia, Google, Tesla, Meta, Amazon. If you've got all the holdings, you're just going to do what the S&P does. And if the S&P goes down, go, oh, well, I'm down 8%, but the S&P is down 8%, so I'm not doing that bad compared to the market. And that's what a lot of people do at the moment as well. So I try and break that trend. I am trying to buy individual stocks, and I'm not trying to just follow the indexes. And also, for me, I don't care about year-to-date return. For me, it's all about what you sell and what you buy in, and if you're making money. That's the big thing. You might have a great year-to-date return, but if all you're doing is all the time, your history is selling stocks at losses, all you're good at is getting green numbers on the screen. And that's not very good for me. And that's another thing that I wanted to say. So for the people that wanted that sort of information, there you go. The other information as well is like about UK to US portfolio split. So I've talked about this many times before. I generally think you should have a bigger US portfolio holding than UK, because the US has better companies. It's a lot more stronger of an economy. Worldwide companies, you probably want to have more exposure there. So for me, I always try to keep 75% of my wealth in the US markets and 25% in the UK market. It always helps as well that I've had my US account running for a lot more years than the UK account. So that's why I always try to do 75% to 25%. At the moment, it's actually 77% US, 23% UK. So it's a little bit out of that, but it's not too far off. So I'm absolutely happy with that. And I think that's absolutely fine that people want to, know, oh, how much do you put in this end and how much do you put in that end? That's, for me, is a question that is people actually wanting to understand, like, oh, how do you do this portfolio and what would you do there? And I think that's a very, fine question for people to be asking. But there's other questions there that I've kind of said that I think people that are trying to just be negative or are just trying to be nosy on personal finances, and hopefully that kind of clears that sort of them sort of questions up anyway. So I thought I'd post that on the Patreon, I thought I'd post that on YouTube, and hopefully that kind of clears the situation up, so you kind of understand where my position is. And like I said, for me, I think what I share is relatively good, especially when you compare to a lot of finance YouTubers. And for certain subjects like that I personally don't want to share, hopefully that kind of gives some reason around that. And hopefully, people, accept that, because I have seen displeased and aggravated remarks to the information I do share. But hopefully that clears it up and where I stand, and hopefully everyone is okay with that. Hopefully, we could move forward and continue. Obviously, if it's a point of view where people still feel like, well, there's no point with the portfolio reviews, obviously we can remove them and not do them. That is fine, but hopefully the information I share is transparent enough and people are okay where my situation is. And I just wanted to clear a few things up about the things that are being said on certain platforms and the YouTube comments as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in a bit.